Okay, well, we've got a few people on and some people that have been in some of the sessions, but not all of the sessions. Let's see, who do we have? So Dan, you were at the first one. Melinda, have you been at most of the sessions, or I think you're at the last two, correct? Might take a minute for her to find her unmute. Puneet, which ones have you been on?
I think last two sessions have been.
Okay. And Kalmaljit? Oh, well. So I think it's super important and that I go back to a little bit of the beginning again, right? It doesn't make sense to just jump into session 4 if people have not really been participants in all of the sessions. So again, I'm going to go through a summary real quick, but I'm also going to ask you some questions as we go through it and just see where everyone's at in terms of their retention and what we're talking about. So let me go back one here. Session 4, I'm gonna do a quick recap of session 1 through 3. We're gonna talk a little bit about leads, deal funnel, your sphere, new contacts, drive-bys, and opportunities that way. How to partner, identify opportunity, and research different areas for partnership. And then I've got a couple of scripts that I put together, and then I'm just going to leave it open and feel free to ask me anything. So recapping, there we go. Recapping on session 1, we talked about commercial basics, talked about asset types. Would anyone like to take a stab at naming the 10 asset types in real estate? I mean, in commercial real estate? Oh, come on. Just throw out a couple of them and we'll add them up. I'm starting. So you've got office, you've got multifamily. What else? You guys can go on unmute and help me here.
It's like in residential, single family, multifamily, and commercials, offices, still, industrial factories, plant, distribution centers, like your large lands, wicked large farms, forests, like wood, timber, that's all comes in that.
Yeah,
And
so basically I'm gonna go all the way back because it sounds like everyone hasn't really internalized those different types. And it's real important because, oh, apology, 2 seconds. Oh, my gardener's here. So going back here, we talked about the 10, and I'm going to go through them real quick. Multifamily, then we've got office, you got industrial, and Puneet, you mentioned a few of these. Retail, hotels and hospitality. Land is a separate category altogether, and then mixed use. And then special purpose being schools, churches, interesting things like rec centers, that sort of thing. Self-storage is a new one. And then we also have life science buildings, which is a new one. And the reason that's a separate, you might think, well, that is an office building, but life sciences require a lot more, having to have a lot of water in some of the different maybe testing rooms, or it may need a clean room, or it may need something that's quite unique to that life science area. So, whoops. I'm just going a little bit too fast here. So those are the different classes that we have. And then, or those are different asset types, apologies. Asset classes, class A versus class C versus class B, just a recap. Who wants to take that one on for me? I'm making this interactive, people.
You want to read this one?
No, just what's your understanding of these different ones?
So class A has like marble floors, very nice and upscale, modern. Class B, I want to say, is a little bit more dated of a building. Um,
Mhm.
Got the year you gave us, but maybe, but then class C is like a 20-year-old building.
Exactly, exactly. So great. Yeah, so sometimes you can just identify, some people use these classes based on the age of the property too, because then you're gonna need new HVAC, or you're gonna need upgrades, or that might not be, you know, ADA compliant, or whatever it happens to be, right? So class A can either be the class of it, right? The quality of the materials, the location, all of that, but it also can be that it's brand new. So there's not any deferred maintenance that you have to really address.
But location also weighs heavily on A, right? Because case in point, like we know about that one.
Yep, exactly,
And
exactly.
then is the schools plays a major role to decide the classes?
Well, it depends, right? If you're talking about a multi-family property that are 3-bedroom apartments, yeah, probably, right? Because you're gonna attract families more with 3-bedroom apartments. So that would matter, but not in industrial or anything like that. So lease types, these are interesting because you really need to understand different lease types. And if you're talking with a client, you need to know what you're talking about. And you're going to hear triple net a lot. Triple net is really where the tenant is paying for everything. So they're paying for the taxes, insurance, and maintenance. And you might say, well, that's kind of odd, because in residential, usually the landlord pays for all that. And that's why a lot of investors like triple net leases and opportunities to purchase industrial buildings or something like that to manage those, because there is no management. You just collect a check. The tenant's responsible for everything else. So you'll hear triple net quite a bit. The other terms I went over on the past couple of weeks, and you can look those up because these slides are being sent out as we update them. I'm not going to talk about those particular items. I'm going to touch upon commercial real estate financing. I'm actually just partnering with someone else in the office right now that has an opportunity. And we were talking about commercial real estate financing. And it's super important that you understand that it's just so unique in terms of getting a project funded. And there's different types of loans. There's a conventional commercial loan, but typically these are shorter term, and or those commercial loans are a significant amount down, usually 30 to 40%, sometimes 25. So a little bit different than residential. The other thing is hard money. You'll hear that phrase. Hard money is really just an alternative capital source. And that comes with really, really high rates. And it's usually just to bridge something, or just to get someone out of a pinch in a very short term. They're usually high risk with high interest rates of 10 to 20% going back. And then there's 2 SBA loans, which is interesting. And you might want to think about just and have in your back pocket that even you, if you wanted to create and buy an office space, you could apply for an SBA loan, and you would have to occupy 40% of it, but you could rent out the rest as a business owner. So SBA loans are pretty nice in terms of the small amount that you have to put down. Credit score is pretty flexible, and it's amortized like a typical residential loan, and it goes up to 5 million.
And
So
sorry.
no, I was going to say it's just worthwhile, because if you're ever working with a business owner, and just even yourself, I think knowing what's available from the SBA is super important. What were you going to say?
Is that the government also helps small business owners for doing SB loans?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
or any bank we can go and get the SBA loan, or it has to be?
There's approved banks, kind of like USDA loans, right? So you go through like the overarching USDA organization and SBA based on their criteria, and then there's banks that will actually underwrite that. So you just need to make sure that bank actually covers SBA loans.
Okay.
And then it's secured by the government. There's another 504 loan, and that's typically for over 5 million. So that's for big projects. The other thing I talked about, does anybody remember when I talked about mezzanine or capital stack loans? Capital stack is really where you're stacking in all different types of funding. You might not go and get just one loan. You might have 3 different types of loan. You may have junior debt, you may have senior debt, you may, put convertible in there. And then you also may need some mezzanine, which is kind of in the middle of that capital stack. So this is some terminology that it's real important to understand. And think $100 million projects, $200 million projects, you're going to have to get different financing in different sources because you have to spread the risk. This gets really deep. I'm not going to go over this, but some key investment metrics for you to understand is cap rate. And you hear that a lot. Cap rate is the yield on the cost expressed as a percentage. So what you pay and what is your net operating income divided by the purchase price. So it's a pretty easy formula to use. However, I don't think it's very indicative of the success of a particular asset or property, because let's say hypothetically you go and buy an apartment complex in a small town in Kansas, and your adjusted net operating income is pretty decent, but your purchase price is low, right? So you're going to have the same cap rate because the purchase price is low, the net operating income could be okay. That asset could be at 5%, but you might go into a market like Austin where it might not be performing as well, so your cap rate's going to be lower, but your potential for growth and that the property values are continuously increasing is probably not a good formula to use, because you're going to be looking at year over year yield, increased profitability, return on equity, those sorts of things. So it depends. Are you looking at a stable, quiet market? Or are you looking at a high growth market? So those are some things that you need to understand as well. Commercial risk spectrum, opportunistic, value add, core plus, and core. Something just to have in your back pocket. Value add assets are generally properties with opportunities to increase your cash flow. So again, those Class C buildings, right? It may be underperforming. It may need some upgrades. If you bought it for a discount, then you're going to add value to it. And once you add value to it and you're back up at market rent rates, what would that be called? Does anybody remember the term I used? Oh, come on. I've got to be more impactful than this. It means that the property would be stabilized. Once you add your value, you get it back up to market rents, and it's performing at the highest and best value it can. It's a stabilized property. Okay, another recap of acquisition divestiture processes. The due diligence period is much more stringent. It takes a lot longer. You just need to understand that, so that if you say you find, a small apartment complex and you come to me and you say, Danielle, I've got a client that wants to sell this, and you're already getting commission breath because you think it's going to give you a lot of money. By the time it gets sold, by the time you go through due diligence, it could be a good 12 to 18 months before it gets sold. And it could fall through several times. It's not like a typical life cycle of residential real estate. Development and construction. This is not for the faint of heart. This is pretty much what I do a lot of. Takes literally 2 to 3 years. And at the end of it, a developer may just walk from the project. And they'll leave money on the table if all of a sudden they get to a point and they think it's not going to pencil. So a little bit frustrating, but that's just how it works. Acquisition and in terms of leasing and tenant management. So that's a strategy some commercial real estate agents use, is that they manage the building, the structure, and therefore when the landlord gets ready to sell, then they're the first person they go to. So some people just focus on leasing and tenant management, and then they get those residual sales out of that. I'm not going to go through the rest of this, but I did talk about value enhancement and capital improvements. Again, you know, you want to do that. If someone says, I'm looking for a value add opportunity, then what you would be looking for, and this might even apply in a duplex, right? What you're going to be looking for is something that needs upgrades. It's underperforming in terms of rent, and that they can get it for a discount based on that, and turn around and improve it and get more money. Repositioning or repurposing, and we also call it adaptive reuse. So this would be a building or a structure that's being underutilized, and you can pivot it and use it as something else, or upgrade it or do something else. We're seeing repositioning and repurposing a lot with the new legislation that's coming out, especially from commercial to residential. And I've mentioned this as well, that there's a lot of legislation out there that is streamlining and making planning approvals a ministerial process for converting commercial properties into residential properties. So
Danielle, I think this morning on the news, I saw something about San Francisco. They want to repurpose some of the buildings in downtown into housing by, I think, 2030.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
they're even doing, you know, smaller motels or hotels too, into condos and other things. So yeah, so that's a great example that they're just having to repurpose all those buildings, because what happened during COVID? All of the startups and offices were vacant in San Francisco. It was just a ghost town, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you know, more and more people that couldn't afford to live there. So it only makes sense. And that's where some of this legislation came in. So you can so if you're driving around, and this is going to go to opportunities, and Morella has been working with me, and she brought an opportunity and said, hey, Danielle, there's this old building and it's sitting there and it's been vacant and it's just an eyesore. Let's contact the owner and talk to them about adaptive reuse. So we've been working on that. So that's another thing that I want to keep on your radar as you're driving around. Look for buildings that you're like, that's just not being used to its fullest potential. And then contact me, and let's look it up and see what's going on with it, and see if there's a way we could contact that owner and say, did you realize that, you know, no-tell Motel 6 that is sitting there could be converted into high density residential, and they could be sitting on a gold mine. So portfolio versus asset management. Again, portfolio is managing the whole portfolio for a particular investor, where an asset manager is someone that manages that particular asset. Just imagine if you were, you know, Trump. I'm sure there's one person that manages the Trump Tower, and then there's someone that manages everything from a strategic direction. And I don't use Trump as an example because I like him. It's just, you know, first thing that came to mind. So let's not go there. The relationship between portfolio and asset management. So portfolio managers are focused on a long-term strategy across all those assets, and asset manager really optimizes that asset and may even manage it from like a tenant perspective. Different types of clients and partners in this whole process, of course, are investors, developers, landlords, you know the typical rundown. But we do rely a lot on consultants in the due diligence process in real estate. Because you have environmentals, you have CEQA, you have all kinds of other criteria, you do have to rely on these different consultants that can come in and assess a property for viability. I am going to go back here. Okay, so any questions so far? Kind of did an overview. I want to talk a little bit about, let me go back to session 4 overview. So I just did a recap of 1 through 3. And I wanted to now go into, let's see. Okay, I'm just reading my chats. I wanted to go into sphere, new contacts and drive-bys, and then we're going to talk about how to partner, script role playing, and I'm going to call on you guys because I want to do some role playing here, and then ask me anything about, anything that you might have learned or anything you want to understand about commercial real estate. So going to sphere. Many of you have a database of, X number of people, and all of those people in your sphere, you have no idea what other assets they own. I mean, you can pull it up through title reports, etc. But wouldn't it be nice to know that, Mr. Baker has a small apartment complex and an industrial site, and you're managing his home, right? So you've helped him buy and sell several homes. Well, let's dive into what they currently have. Let's understand how they're utilizing those, if they're underperforming, if they're stabilized, and if there's opportunity, right? Because a lot of these buyers buy something and just sit on it. And they're probably making some pretty good money. But if you do a return on equity and look at the value of that property versus potentially what they're cash flowing on, and you kind of do a quick analysis and say, if we were to take that 5 million and turn around and invest it in X, Y, and Z, we believe that we could get you, an 18% return on investment, as opposed to currently you're getting 9%. So understanding what they have and how it's performing. So this is where I want you to come to me or another commercial agent and say, okay, these are more than 1 through 4 units. So it's not considered residential, but I do know that I have a client that has multiple investment properties. Let's take a look at these, and then we'll go through it with the fine-tooth comb. We'll do some analysis. I have some really good examples that you can share, and then I'm going to talk about a script that you can use when you're talking to them. And you're saying, well, why would I do that? I mean, I'm not making any money. Yes, you are, because there's an opportunity for either just a referral fee, and on $5 million of referral fee is pretty darn decent. Or if it's something you really want to do the heavy lifting on, it could be closer to a 50-50. And then I am pretty much the face, and all the contracts run through me, because only, I think, 7 of us have E&O insurance in the office that can run commercial contracts. So it's not something you can just run with. Also, look at new contacts when you're talking to them. Always just make it part of your conversation when you're talking to them, and say, are you looking to buy or sell, or are you happy with your home? Do you, is there anything you want to do in terms of improving your lifestyle? Oh, and by the way, do you own any investment properties? So just always add that in. And you should always be adding in, and oh, by the way, does anybody that you know of or that you've been talking to has been considering purchasing or buying real estate? Always ask that. Don't ever forget to ask for who do they know that you need to know, right? So at the same time, who do they know that you need to know? What other assets do they have that you need to know? So just don't leave that on the table at all, ever. and then drive-bys. So again, when you're driving around your neighborhood, here's the things to look for. You're driving around San Jose and you see a row of homes and then you see a vacant lot. And then you see a row of homes and you're like, why is that lot just sitting there vacant? It's probably some old cooger has it just sitting on his books and he's not doing anything with it. And it's probably worth $1 million because those homes, the value is in the land, right? We turn around, we list it and we get, get that property sold. Ideally, it's a simple conversation and you let them know what they're sitting on. The other opportunity is maybe you drive by an apartment complex and you see that it's just not being maintained. That's usually because a couple of things. It's underperforming. You could be in the hood. Or that the landlord is strapped for cash and can't do improvements. So in my tools, I can pull up what they owe, what the probability for them to sell is, and also what other assets they own, and then also all of their contact information. So at a finger, at a few keystrokes, we can have all that information at our fingertips. So, does anybody, I always, whenever I'm driving anywhere, I call it my dialing for dollars kind of thing, because I literally will call people as I'm driving. I pull up my tool and I'm like, who owns that site? And I call and I leave a message. And I say, I'm sitting right in front of your property and X, Y, and Z, whatever it happens to be. And I'll usually, and this even seals the deal, is I take a picture of it and then follow up with the email and say, I was just standing outside your property and I noticed that, it's let's just say it's a small office building, a converted house, like in downtown Campbell, that's an office building. And I noticed that, you're having a hard time getting it leased. You have a for lease sign. Have you thought about potentially selling and buying something that's easier to manage? Snap a picture and say, I was just walking by. And then they're like, oh, she does know the property. She's not calling just out of like a list from title, right? And that gives you more credibility sometimes too. So use that also in your home sales. And if it was me, I would even target communities or target sellers that probably had a higher interest rate with variable loans, and they may be thinking about selling, because we know a lot of people are sitting on some good rates right now and a lot of equity, and so there's no incentive to move. So find those homes that you can get some information on the loan. They may have a variable rate. They were stupid and they didn't lock in these low ones. And then I would drive by those houses and take pictures too, in a certain community, because I think that gives you a lot of credibility. So just don't, leave that to chance.
And Daniel, that drive-by only helps if someone living for that county for a long time.
Uh-huh.
Then he has the observations like what is good and bad, right? Someone new came for like it doesn't have that same look or same eye with someone is looking for like living for like 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what, is that a question or just
It's a question. Like I've been kind of living in California. It's been just around a year. So does it have if I live longer for the certain county, that can help me to find those lots or commercials or real estates, or it doesn't matter?
No, I think it's just, just you're asking whether you need to really know the area in order to find those
Right.
opportunities. I don't think so. I mean, how many of you have driven past buildings and you're like, gosh, that's a shame. They're not taking care of it or whatever. There's usually a reason that they're not. And so, I've just been pleasantly surprised, to be honest with you all, with my cold calls. Some are a waste. Some, at least I'm adding to my database and they're talking to me, or they're just, an old fart and he just wants to have lunch or coffee on me, right? Whatever it happens to be. But cold calling is really pays, as long as you're really genuine and not so scripted. You know what I mean? And it just, as soon as someone's scripted, you're like, oh God. But if you talk a little bit about the community and the last call, or the last conference, I'm just babbling here. Our last class, I talked about the value you can add by being on the local city and the planning's distribution list for things going on in the city, right? So, and that's a great way to start. Did you know in Mountain View that the R3 zoning now is gonna double its density? I know that you have this duplex. Did you know now you can add 4 units on it, or whatever it happens to be, right? I'm just saying R3. But that's true. They're in 2025, Mountain View is gonna increase their R3 zoning to be a much higher density. So isn't that an easy conversation? Right? As opposed to, hi, my name's so-and-so. Have you ever thought of buying or selling? You know, you just, and so I'm reaching out to some people that may have underutilized properties in R3 zoning, and I wanted to talk to you about that. And because I helped a colleague down the road, and now they're putting in plans to add another 3 units, and they're going to be doubling their return on equity, right? Or net operating income. So those are just different conversations, and I think those are easier conversations, and I think people are more inclined to stay on the line with you and have those chats. Any questions? Does anybody do that sort of thing? Does anybody cold call? Just curious.
I just talk to people, like in line, wherever I am. I strike conversation, but I also started, I follow like local news, channels, it used to be a newspaper, let's say, but now it's, it's all online. So, and also like local associations, like the local YPA, right? Young Professionals Network, or whatever it's called, association, and things like that, because they also stay plugged into what's going on besides the city and the obvious other, sources.
Right.
So it's very, very good you gave us a great idea too, to tap into that, right? And it gives you kind of a buffer when you call someone, because it's not so direct, like you said, asking about something. And so definitely, I think having that at your disposal, whatever is going on currently, and especially within, the building industry. And there is so much news right now around real estate. It's crazy. Every day you can find 55 articles just in general. What's going to happen? What do you think happened? What's going to happen with the rates? How is the economy? Or layoffs, or whatever happens. There's so much to dig into. So I think just doing that, and just being aware, like just looking around, being observant, when you're somewhere, just, kind of noticing.
Yep. Noticing, noticing everything and seeing what's going on in the community. And if you become the person that knows what's going on too, right, then you're going to be looked at as a trusted resource. So yeah, it's just a different way of having yourself stand out a little bit. Because as we know, there's so many freaking real estate agents, and everyone's an expert. And everyone has, what is it? Every person knows at least 5 real estate agents or something like that. So, so how do you just stand out? So I'm talking here, and the whole purpose of this training is to get everyone a level set understanding of basic terms and terminology, and just really give you a little foundation. But again, Mark made it very clear that he only has a certain number of people that can transact on commercial transactions, because he's only paying for insurance on those people, right? For the E&O. And so I still want you to be making money off of your clients with their broader portfolio. And so that's why I said, well, let's create this course that talks about how to partner with us so that we can all benefit. You can keep your clients in KW House without them potentially going to another commercial brokerage, because now Century 21 has one, Compass has one, all of them. So could you imagine if a Compass commercial agent came in and listed your client's, 6-unit complex, that most likely they're going to be trying to get that residential opportunity as well. So you don't want to lose them. So
And I'm sorry, can I chime in? Actually, even if they have more than 4 units and it's still a residential property, sometimes they're not aware of this, that you may represent them. And I remember I made a mistake because I have a client still, but he listed it. He didn't even realize that I could have helped him, through my office. And I my bad that I didn't tell him that.
well, and if you have clients, why aren't you looking up to see what their whole portfolio looks like?
Well, now I am. I've been doing that, but this was in the beginning. I
right?
didn't realize, all these tools that we have, and RPR is a great resource. Everyone has access to that. Realist, right? You go
Mhm.
in and you can find it by property address or the person. So it will tell you a lot of information on there. So just
Yep.
kind of dig in, be the little geek, look it up.
Yep. Oh, yeah, definitely. I agree. So I just lost my darn slide deck. Where did I go? I went off to go pull up my tool and now I'm a little bit lost myself trying to find my darn screen because it went away. There we go. So do any of you know, kind of your clients' portfolios? Has anybody
I
been?
do now. You know what? Sorry that I'm chiming in all the time, but I
No,
just
that's
wanted to
fine.
share something new that I've started. Even when I'm contacting my farm or that area that I want to target, let's say, I am looking up every single person because my farm is not very big, but I want to know, kind of get to know these people. That's a big thing, and I want to know what's going on and the background, right?
Right.
So just to see if they have anything else, do they have a second home or a business? And it will tell you like, okay, oh, they own a building in another city that's commercial and it's small, but it could be a business. And then you find out they're a business. Nowadays we live in such a time that you can see these things. So it's kind of cool to know because you may know also who may jive with you, right? We don't need to
Right.
work with everyone. We just need to work with people that might want to work with us. And that's kind of, I find it a nice tool to kind of see, um, who might, be a good candidate to work with.
And I think that's a good point that you bring up, that a lot of residential agents aren't inquiring,
Mhm.
if potentially that owner has a duplex or another asset, right? Just really asking, I know we're looking for a new home for you. I love working with you. Did you know that, Keller Williams has a commercial arm? It's one of the largest commercial teams in the United States right now. And we, as residential agents, can handle anything up to a fourplex. And we have people really experienced in that. Unless you're experienced, you say, then I've done several of those transactions. And then also we have brokers in our office that we can team up with, and we can manage your whole portfolio. So why have multiple different contacts when we can be your one-stop shop? So that's a great conversation to have. Always just add that in too, right? Do you have a portfolio? Have you thought about creating, revenue stream from owning real estate? Do you want to add and create a portfolio? If so, let's talk. What have you been thinking about? Maybe, it's too expensive here in the Bay Area, but maybe you say, well, a high growth area is Fresno. Have you thought about it? You can get a, 400 $1,000 house, you're breaking even on it, and within 5 years, it's gonna, almost double because of the new high-speed train going in, just things like that. Have you thought about it? Especially when they're sitting on a lot of cash and they're gonna put a big ton down on their primary residence. You're like, does that make sense? Wouldn't it be better to X, Y, and Z? I don't know. Just ask the questions.
Last week, Danielle, when you told us about this, I
Mhm.
made a list of everyone I know that has assets, but it's also a business owner.
Good job.
So I can have the conversation with them. They're on top of my mind. But I'm really gonna kind of push them onto you because I don't know all the lingo and stuff like you just spit out, about Fresno and this and that. Like I'm not there
Yeah.
yet.
Well, but if they're business owners, okay, so what type of business do you have? I'm just curious. And are you leasing space? Did you know that you can buy off, an office condo and now you're building up equity instead of just spending it on a lease? Have
Mhm.
you thought about, you're a chiropractor. Have you thought about not leasing and buying a medical condo? Have you thought about buying an entire complex and then renting it out? And you get a small business loan, remember I said, as long as you're 40% of it, you can use the other 60% for revenue. Did you know you could do that?
Yeah.
Just little things like that. So if you have a client, let's just say, and you go through and you realize they're a chiropractor, right? Them,
Mhm.
the man and the wife are both chiropractors and they have their own practice. We'll ask, well, where do you practice out of? Then go look it up, see who owns it. Right? You see
Mhm.
that they don't own it, they're leasing it. There's a conversation to be had. Right?
Yeah. What
So,
about like a tow company? They have to rent land, right, to park all their
right.
tow trucks.
Yep. Yep. So they're probably spending a lot of money on an industrial site or a yard, right?
Mhm.
That probably only has, a storage container office in it, right? It's not, it's nothing fancy.
Right.
And you can help them find a site and they're building up equity. And they can
Mhm.
use an SBA loan, so at 7% of buying your own and building up that equity versus leasing, it's just a much better model. Just like we always talk to people, why are you renting when you could buy? If you
Mhm.
could, if you show your single family home potential buyers the model of like, here's what you pay in rent, and if we got you into a condo here, you'd almost break even. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
have the conversations already. Let's just do it at a different level, and I can help you.
Okay. Thank you.
I think over time, I know it's complicated and it might be a bit to chew off now, but over time, I think you'll find that you're gonna build up this muscle and that skill set. So I have these old scripts and role play in here that not necessarily is accurate for what we're talking about here, because it's my script, but I just want to go through it real quick with you so you can hear my script, right? And if I do a script, but I really don't. I don't know how to stick to rules. That's my problem. So I would call the owner and I'd say, hey, John, this is Danielle. I'm with KW Commercial. And I have a couple of developers that are chomping at the bit that really are looking for some land that they can develop. They need at least 3 acres. Your site looks perfect for it. Have you thought about any disposition strategies? Would you be willing to consider, I don't know why my screen just did that. Would you be willing to consider looking at an LOI? And then who knows what they would say, and they may say, well, sure, I'll take a look at it. Okay, well, I have one developer in mind, and I'm gonna run this past him, and we're gonna run the numbers to see what we can offer you, and then I'll present it. And also, by the way, do you mind if I market this off market? Because I have a cadre of different developers that are interested, and I could potentially push this, or we can even put it on the market and see what the market's willing to bear and really get this sold, because right now legislation is allowing you to double your units on it. So, you know what I mean? Just, I talk fast, just throw out a whole bunch of bleh. And then you just keep going. You keep going with value add information that's going to get them to want to perk up. You know, and always throw in their top dollar, right? Right now's the time. Inventory is so low. We're going to see a flood of new building coming on the market, and the values of land are going to go down. So this is the time, you know, just whatever, urgency. And then, you know, I think one of the hardest things about cold calling is making sure that that seller is ready, willing, and able, right? Because you don't want it, you know, someone to go, yeah, okay, bring me something, let me look at it, right? You don't want to go and you know, burn out your relationships getting someone to write an LOI on something that truly isn't ready. So if they say, sure, bring me an LOI, I want to look at it, and I would probably say, well, let me follow up with a conversation with you, and I can do a market analysis and tell you what I think they'll come in at, and see if this is a number that would make sense to you. You know, because I don't want to burn my relationships on the buy side either by throwing out opportunities that truly aren't, you know, someone say, yeah, bring me an offer. If it's 80 million, I'll take it, right? Those sorts of people. You don't want that. So this is kind of the script that I quickly crafted for all of you, as you're talking to potential clients or your existing clients and wanting to see if they have commercial real estate. I don't know if this works, but it just gives you some general ideas. And basically you would start with, you know, hi to the owner and your name. You're from Keller Williams Bay Area Estates. And did you know that we have a top performing commercial group in our office? And we would like to introduce you to some of these services we offer. Or you say, I wanted to discuss your portfolio, John. I know, you know, I helped you buy your last house, and I see that you do have a duplex. And I wanted to see if you want to invest in any additional real estate, or if you want to do an analysis to see how that particular asset is performing. And then explain, I can handle anything up to 4 units. And I can do it, you know, seamlessly, and we can get it on the market. And then you can also say, and we have the commercial group that can do anything above and beyond that. So we want to be your preferred supplier for all things real estate. You know, trust Keller Williams to do that for you. And, you know, you can just keep going with stuff like that. I mean, does anybody want to give kind of role playing or scripting something like this a shot? Come on, people. You're salespeople. You're going to be risk takers. I'm going to call on Dan because he's on the line. Dan.
Yeah, perfect.
Did he just jump off? No, there he is. Dan, are you listening? Dan Reeves.
Yeah, I'm here. What's going on?
I'm calling on you, buddy. So
Okay.
Dan has been calling around trying to find some land for a client that I've shared with him, and we're working together. But this client's looking for self-storage space, which is very unique, hard to find. You got to make sure that it's in the muni code and the right zoning and all that good stuff. So Dan, when you call up some of these potential landowners, what do you say?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of all over the place. It's kind of what you were talking about earlier. Do a little background research. You want to know what kind of city you're dealing with. In this situation, for the storage unit, we wanted to make sure to call properties that were in the right zoning. So that was first step. Second step, when I actually physically call them, kind of like what you said earlier, have a good idea of what kind of property they have, what's going on with it now. I like to look up who the tenants are in there as of now, especially for what we were looking for. A lot of it was vacant land. So it's pretty easy to see it wasn't being used. Google's pretty up to date with their pictures, so you can kind of get a 6-month reference of what's going on in the property pretty easily.
Mhm.
I have personally found that emails have worked a lot better for me getting callbacks than cold calling. I've only had a few people actually get back to me out of the, well, shoot, probably several hundred now that I've called just for this one property. Emailing, for some reason, has got a lot of response, some of it good, some of it bad. But I keep it very straightforward. I just basically let them know, like, hey, you have a valuable property. I have a client that is interested in purchasing it if you're open to that discussion. And that has landed me most of the conversations that I've had thus far. Sometimes they don't get back to me for several weeks. In this
Mhm.
case, I had a guy call me back about a month and a half later, who I had no idea what even property it was from down in Salinas. And then it turned out, after having a conversation with him for a while, that he didn't even want to sell it anyways. So did a lot of weird stuff like that continuously. Emails through some of the programs that Danielle has, brings up their emails are pretty accurate, usually gives you more than one email for the landowner or the property owner. I noticed that about 25-30% of my emails are kicked back because they're old, but for the most part, they are landing in somebody's email box,
Mhm.
inbox. And yeah, that's pretty much the way I go about it. Just be straightforward with them. And then you can usually in the first couple seconds gauge what kind of person they are when you're talking to them. If they're friendly, they want to talk, or if they don't really want to talk, I just give them the business and move on.
So thanks, Dan. Yeah, so it's tricky because there's not a lot on the market right now, right? And so I think you can also be doing this with homes. If you have buyers and you know what their buy box is, you know exactly what they want, I would go off to some of those owners and say, have you thought about selling? Because I have a buyer that would buy this in a heartbeat. And be earnest, right? Because I'm sure they hear, we have buyers, you know, it's got to really be, you know, this is a family that just moved to the area and I'm calling around specifically in homes that in this buy box, exactly what they want. And if you're on the fence at all about selling, I would love to help this family out and help you out, right? Whatever. Um, you know, not just we have buyers. I mean, that just ugh. So has anybody else had a strategy that works for them?
And then in that case, that requirement that we just discussed with Dan, so CRE and LoopNet would be the first step as a source to look into. If
No, I have a tool that I use. It's called Reonomy. It's a subscription. And it does AI generated like analysis on potential for selling and things like that as well. So it's an expensive tool. But I think like if you're just looking up your owner to see if they own, you know, other residential assets like a duplex or a triplex or something, you can pull that up in some of our MLS tools. But if you have a hot client that you really think is a high net worth that might have a large portfolio, then just schedule a call with me and let's go through it together and we can use my tool and I can see what I can find.
makes sense, thanks.
Okay, so let's see, I'm just going to the end here. Ask me anything because we're almost at the top of the hour. So I'm hoping you guys learned something. I'm hoping I gave you some ideas. Right now, it's all hands on deck, just trying to make deals, right? And they're few and far between. So I think it's really about being creative and solving people's pain points. And one of their pain points could be, you know, operating with multiple different agents and different assets, and you can become their go-to for all things real estate. And wouldn't that be nice? I mean, then you're really engaged in every transaction. Now you become their portfolio manager. How valuable is that, right? Because then you can just tap me and say, okay, Danielle, they have industrial piece of land they want to sell, and you're getting a referral fee, but all the while you're going to stay abreast of what's going on and what's happening with that asset. It'll stay in your database and you'll be able to monitor that. So, it just is a value add opportunity where other residential agents aren't looking beyond. You need to be looking beyond. So ask me anything. Come on, anybody. Yes, the hair color is real, and yes, I'm only 30.
How are your puppies doing?
Great. Yeah, he's sleeping. I should share a picture with you guys. I was on a conference call earlier, and then I went into the other room. He tore apart one of my chairs. And there's stuff everywhere. And I went,
Are
oh,
they
my
actually
God.
new puppies? Like young puppies?
Yeah, well, my I was gonna say bitch, but that's what she is. She had a litter of 5, only 2 made it. So, I kept
Oh.
one and the other one went to the baby daddy. But yeah, so I do border collies and I train them. So that's the fun stuff. Anybody, anything real estate related? Okay, I'm putting this up here.
I have a question. What was your most complex deal and how long did it take to close?
Well, I have one that's an 8-year option. It's not that complicated. I'm doing one right now that's pretty darn complicated, and the reason it's complicated because I'm representing both sides. And the negotiation process has been so painful. Literally, we've been negotiating for about 3 months now. And we're just getting close to maybe signing a PSA. And it's an existing industrial site that has multiple buildings on it that's going to be converted to high density residential. So that one's 25 million. And it'll probably, if it closes, right? Chances of closing on these things, it sounds amazing, but trust me, the work that goes into it, I'd say there's a 25% chance that this one closes. But we haven't even started the initial due diligence. So it's probably only 10% right now. Once we pass that phase, then it might be 25%. And it could take about 2.5 years till I see a paycheck. So it's really frustrating, to be honest. I have more cancellations than I have sales because listings, once I get the listing, they're long hauls, right? And so by the time you're 2 years in, the client's like, okay, well, we've just decided to keep it now. We're gonna take it off the market. So it's a lot of
Now,
frustration.
what was the easiest deal you've ever done and the fastest?
Well, it's interesting. I remember having a phone call I don't even remember the phone call. Apparently someone called me about a piece of land and I sounded intelligent, apparently. And they called me back and said, we remember talking to you and you seem like you really knew a lot about agricultural land. And we just found this $4 million parcel we want to purchase. Can you put an offer in for me? And I went, okay. And that one went through. So it was just,
It does happen too, right?
yeah. But, to be honest, even just yesterday, a guy called me on this really little parcel. It's really nothing, but we worked really long on it about 6 months ago. And I thought it was dead in the water. He just came back and goes, could you go talk to that owner and see if he would go down to 400,000? And I went, okay, I'll just check. And the owner said, sure. And so now I'm back in contract. And so little things like that help sustain me for these long haul ones. You know what I mean?
Right.
So again, if anybody hasn't filled out this eval, that would be great. If you already have, still another eval would be great. And you just put session 4 CRE training or something like that. Because I am going to get KWU certified and you have to have, I think, 80 feedbacks that they need to analyze.
I think I did too, so I'll do this one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem. I'm sure you'll get it. It'll be
Yeah.
great. I'll write the eval. I think they ask for like a longer evaluation at the end if you want to write something else. And just make sure you scroll down, you guys, if you're doing it, to not on list, because Danielle's name's not on there yet, but
Yeah,
you
you have to
can
put
put
it
it
in
on.
there.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I'll probably call you later to talk
Yeah,
about the thing.
definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
Thank you,
Can
Daniel.
question.
I also done this one, Daniel. Just want to let you know.
Thank you so much.
And second, this is your last class, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. That was so good. Can you do this every month?
Does anybody else have anything else?
I have a question,
Yes.
how hard to change zoning for commercial parking in a lot? Like if you, let's say, want to make commercial parking,
Oh,
how
God.
hard is to change zoning?
That's a loaded question. Depends on the municipality, depends on if there's inconsistencies in the general plan, and we also call those loopholes. And then if there is no loopholes and there's no legislation that's coming down, then you have to do a general plan amendment that could take 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years. Okay. All right. Another question. I actually miss I attend first class here and then this one. I miss
Mhm.
between classes. Do you thinking how you once you talk to commercial person, you just open up like a little bit your mind that okay, this is a possibility here, right? Do you guys have like you said in a KW there's a 7 other person commercial who are doing it. Do you guys have any kind of meeting that you invite like us new agent over there to just listen, maybe not participate?
No, they're all cowboys. They just go off and do their own thing. Nope, I'm the only one.
Oh.
Literally, I've even asked them all to join me in teaching this, like, yeah, no.
Okay, then we stick with you, I think.
Yeah, totally.
You're the nice one for new one, I think.
I second that.
We have some cowboy boots.
But you think if it's a last class, you think any other way we can connect it in a group
For
something like
asking
this?
questions or whatever,
Mhm,
or
yeah.
it's
Question, or is that good to just call you separate or text you or something?
I mean, if you wanted to, we could create, I don't want to call it commercial because then Mark might blow a gasket, right? But I would be more than happy to have an investment group where we talk about how to analyze properties.
That'd be
And,
great, like a
and,
mastermind.
yeah, like, what is ROI? How do you consider return on equity? Really diving deep into the cap rates. And I mean, it's not that sexy really, but I think it will add a lot to your language, right? In terms of
Right.
talking with people. So I would be more than happy to do something like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, something we can stay connected so we don't feel disconnected with commercial, commercial agents. So sometime we're we're just stepping in a real estate, and then when you are there, it's just open us a little bit mind that oh yeah, this is possibility. If we have somebody, we shouldn't say, oh, we don't do commercial. We can just refer to this person. And then now listening you it's look like you can do it if something like this, if you see old building like you said today, and then we can just talk to you, and then there's possibilities sometimes when we are keep listening uh agent like you, and then your mind kind of a little bit open up with the other possibilities. So something, anything you think you can do it in a group, or I think
Yeah.
it's we really appreciate that, and we appreciate for these classes.
Yeah, no, I'm fine with doing some sort of a you know, investment, you know, mastermind or something, and maybe, you know, I just need to think about that and run it past, a couple of people and just get a general idea of who might be interested in that, and we just kind of dive into it, because I know Mark is doing a lot of like investing out of state and things like that, but he's doing that more because I think he's getting those agents in the office to do some investments, right?
Mhm.
Which is a little bit different than teaching you how to talk to your clients about investment.
Right.
So let me ruminate on that one, and I'll let you know what I come up with, but we're kind of past the hour here, and I got to get ready for another Zoom. So thank you, everybody, for joining, and I really appreciate your time, and yeah, ask me anything anytime.
If I can just throw one thing, hi, I know I've been silent in the wings. If I can throw one thing out
Oh,
there,
wait a minute, Ruth, are
Oh,
you
yeah.
clean?
I am,
Okay,
and
good.
clothed. I was taking a shower. Message Danielle,
Too
be
much
like,
information.
don't call on me, I'm taking a shower. But just have the conversations with people, ask them if they're willing or just willing to talk about it further. And it's like, hey, I have a partner that I work on with this sort of stuff, you know, they're really skilled, do you want to see what makes sense? And then just set up a time that works with them and Danielle. I've done it before, we've had great conversations with people. It's a process, you know, as Danielle mentioned, because things aren't always straightforward like buying or selling a house, but just make the ask and know that you have somebody in your corner that can help you with if they say yes.
Thanks, Ruth. Yeah, it's fun. It's great working with everybody too, because then I get to know everybody at a different level, and then they get frustrated with me and go, oh my gosh, she's so busy. How do I get her time? Right, Ruth? But you know, it just makes for a better work life, right? If we can
It's
share.
real life.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. And we get to share, right? It's hard working on your own. It's, you know, a slog. So working with other people is what makes life go around. So, and preferably not the pain in the ass clients, but some fun colleagues, right?
Yeah.
Okay, guys, I got to race. Thank you so much.
All right, bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.